Pathfinders. I'm Rick.
And I'm not Heather. I'm Jordan.
This is Jordan. And today we're actually going to be talking to all of our Pathfinders out there, of course, but also our Starfinders, or future Starfinders, as we are steadily making our way through the inexorable crunch of time up towards the release of Starfinder. Or at the very least, its core rulebook.
And the first adventure path.
And the first adventure path. And a couple modules. I think we covered all of that. One is that you can go back and look about 2 videos back and then see our coverage on everything Starfinder related, which is coming out, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So today, though, we're here to talk about basically what you're going to be expecting to see from Starfinder when it drops very shortly. This is not going to be an in-depth review of the core rulebook, as we're going to be covering that once the book's actually dropped and all of you can get your hands on it. Instead, this is more or less just an overview of a couple things to expect from it. Information that has been released from Paizo, from things like their interviews with Polygon, Game Informer, pretty much anyone who will basically has any sort of interest whatsoever in the role-playing genre has at this point interviewed pertaining towards Starfinder. As it's really like the big takeaway thing. Yeah, I know it's Gen Con 50, and people are really excited about it being Gen Con 50, but it's kind of the big takeaway from it is Starfinder.
And they've done, if you're going to Gen Con, apparently they've got a huge booth with all kinds of stuff for you to pick up.
They actually opened a second booth now.
Yeah, they've got now the second booth now. It's going to be huge. We're not going, so...
Unfortunately, we are not going to be attending this year.
We'll be sitting in front of our mailboxes eagerly awaiting the delivery man.
And by mailboxes, we probably mean like the PDF button, but...
Yeah, probably that
same
too.
difference. So yeah, we're going to basically be talking about information that's come out pertaining towards Starfinder thus far. This is not going to be an all-inclusive kind of thing, but more or less give you an opportunity to see our take on it, decide whether or not you're going to be interested in it, and maybe persuade some people.
So, for those of you who are expecting this to be Pathfinder in space, you're not entirely wrong. The setting of Starfinder is in the future of the Pathfinder setting, in which Galarian has gone missing. And we mean gone missing as in it's not there anymore. The world is gone. Nobody actually knows what has happened to it. The gods aren't saying. No amount of divination is able to determine this. And nobody has any memory of that time period in what is called the gap, right, in which nobody remembers really anything that happened during this period when something happened. We don't know really what.
They had a really interesting thing where they talked about that, where they were saying how it affected the entire universe. And so it's not just people don't remember about Galarian.
Yeah.
It's you woke up the next day and you don't remember this person laying in bed next to you. You know they're your wife, but you don't remember anything about how you met or how these children came about. And you remember where you work, but you don't remember ever going there before. But you remember how to do your job. Like nations were at war with one another.
And they don't know why.
And they don't remember why.
Yeah.
I'm assuming some of them just kept shooting because that's what people do. But yeah, I'm going to hope some of them maybe went, oh, okay, this is an opportunity to rethink things.
Yeah, so...
Galactic opportunists.
Yeah, and so that's, kind of redefined, I guess, relations for everybody. There is still something in the place of Galarian. It's Absalom Station, which is basically a space station in the correct orbit of where Galarian would be. And that's where you're actually going to start the first adventure path. Dead Suns starts in Absalom Station. And that adventure path is going to kind of explore the Pact World system, which is the Galarian solar system. Now,
if the word Absalom sounds familiar to all of you, and it probably does, there's, of course, the city of Absalom.
It's right there. It's actually probably off screen.
Yeah.
It's probably off screen.
It's up there. And the city of Absalom is considered the city at the center of the world. Absalom Station, from what I've kind of taken it, is kind of the station at the center of the universe, galaxy, however you want to take that. And not only is it, of course, like home to the government for the Pact Worlds, as was kind of previously stated, it is also the headquarters of the Starfinder Society, much as Absalom before it was the headquarters of the Pathfinder Society.
So yeah, if you're playing the Starfinder organized play, you're going to start with the kind of, what do they call it, the reorganization of the Starfinder Society.
Kind of a second founding, yeah.
Yeah, almost a refounding of it, as the organization did exist, but now they don't really remember existing, so there's a bit of a shake-up there.
Yeah, I think a lot of what they've stated was that the Pathfinders eventually just kind of faded, and then, suddenly there's this great new mystery and everything else, and then I'm going to guess a whole bunch of people digging back through records to try to figure out what happened when, well, there were these Pathfinders before, and their entire job was basically going around and collecting history and interfering with politics and sometimes doing an assorted number of other, like, good things. That's debatable.
Yeah.
That being said, they basically decided, hey, what if we, take Pathfinders, but instead of finding paths, they find stars?
Yes. And
Starfinders.
Yeah, and on that note, there is faster than light travel. I've already forgotten what the term is that they used it for.
Drift.
Drift. There you go. I was like, it's warp, drift. It's something, but yeah, the faster than light travel is called the drift. So you can leave the packed world solar system and actually go out and explore entirely new universes and galaxies far, far away. I think that this actually gives you a kind of a blank canvas for your own homebrew game if you wanted to be like, hey, you've discovered this new solar system and want to explore it. There's definitely that.
A lot of things with Starfinder is very much geared towards people doing homebrew. We'll get into the mechanics a little bit. We're not really going to be delving deep into the mechanics in this video. But the mechanics of the game are designed to encourage game masters that don't want to use pre-written adventures the opportunity to homebrew things very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of the same thing of, you can have the Star Wars mentality if you want, where effectively choose an environment type, so ice, and you can have the ice planet, or the jungle planet, or the desert planet, etc., etc. Or you can go for, they can fly to an entirely new world and it has 4 seasons and all of the various types of ranging from tundra to ocean to plains and whatever you would like. So really the game is designed to allow someone to effectively drop in a new campaign wherever they want.
So if you were at PaizoCon with us, we actually got a chance to sit down and make our own character and a world for that character, or monster I should say, using the new rule system for creating your own monsters. And if you're used to doing it in the Pathfinder system, this has been severely streamlined, and I say that in a good way. It's a lot easier to create your own monster, and there is a lot of flexibility in terms of environments, even entire world ecologies. If you wanted to make a low gravity planet where there's just floating chunks of the world, sure, go for it. They've got a very kind of open concept so far with regards to kind of making your own content.
And they've also taken a lot of steps to basically, well, I think the easiest thing to do from there would actually be kind of transition into, the setting itself. It's a good opportunity to make your own homebrew locations, however you want. Feasibly, if you've been doing Pathfinder in your own homebrew, so your own world, your own setting, and everything else, you could actually just have your planet be one of the numerous planets out in the universe.
Oh, yeah,
maybe set at the same time, maybe advance your own timeline forward so that you have your own Starfinder versus your own history or historic fantasy game. And so at that point, you can do either one you want. The setting itself primarily revolves around the Pact Worlds, which for many of you, you may be familiar with the solar system as it's included in Solarian. It was first introduced way back in the day, well, we got it right here, in Children of the Void. Children of the Void kind of talks a little bit about it. It's actually expanded on quite a bit after Children of the Void.
That's Second Darkness for people who don't know the Venture Path names by heart.
Yes. In the Second Darkness Adventure Path, they do expand a lot on the galaxy, all of the assorted planets. They delve into that a lot more subsequently in Distant Worlds. Distant Worlds basically covers each one of the planets in the Galarian star system. Mm-hmm. Gives a fair amount of information about the inhabitants of the various planets, ranging from, Galarian to Castrovel to Akaton and all of the rest of them, and gives you an opportunity to actually delve into them. And if you actually have read through Distant Worlds, you'll be probably surprisingly familiar with a lot of the races that are included in Starfinder. There are 7 core races. All of the races from Pathfinder are viable races. There actually will be rules including them. Although the campaign itself, or at the very least the core rulebook, focuses a great deal on the more, let's just use the term, alien of the races, to give you an opportunity to play things that are a little bit further out there.
Yeah, the only one that's returning from the core races in Pathfinder is human.
Human.
Because we all want to be ourselves.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily true. And I will point out that as far as humans are concerned, technically, they could be aliens. We'll get into that when we get to the human section.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Talking about the assorted races, we'll kick it off at the top if you want to.
Sure, yeah. So the first race that we're just going to go in alphabetical order is the androids. If you have played anything set in Numeria, and especially Iron Gods, you may be familiar with androids. They are pretty prominent in that area.
They first showed up in the Inner Sea Bestiary.
Yeah, Inner Sea Bestiary as well. They're different, I will say. They get their own planet, which is, just call it the industrial planet, heavily industrialized. They still have a lot of the same rules in that they do go through regenerations. They also are manufactured in, call them
Foundries.
Foundries, yeah, I think the foundries are still what they're calling them in Starfinder. But they have gone through their own development, apparently by the people of Galarian kind of reinventing them. Gone through a period of subservience as second-class citizens, a rebellion, and which they're kind of still in the middle of trying to get equality with the rest of the races, given that they are an artificial construct with a soul.
Those of you familiar with the Pathfinder history, and any of those of you who read through the Android section as it was included in the Iron Gods adventure path and things along those lines, would be familiar with the androids of Galarian. And during the Pathfinder, I'm just going to say Pathfinder time period. How's that?
Yeah, that works.
During the Pathfinder time period, the androids on Galarian came to Galarian from a crashed spaceship. Whole big thing pertaining towards Numeria. You can actually read a lot about it in the Numerian book. And there you can find out a little bit more pertaining towards it. But long story short, the androids came from another planet called Androffa. And then their ship crashed and there were foundries which made androids on Galarian. The androids that you'll be playing in Starfinder are actually developed separately. And so, unlike the androids from before, who went through their own peaceful rebellion and eventually managed to, achieve equality through peaceful means back on Androffa, the Galarian androids were unfortunately forced to do so, from what I understand, in a much less bloodless way.
Yeah, and there's still, I believe there's even rebellion factions that are still working on, kind of a hit-and-run terrorist rebellion type of a setting. If you look at the back story for the iconic Operative, he works for the Android Rebellion as kind of a mercenary operative.
The second step is going to take us to humans. Humans are humans. The third race, no. The second race, as far as humans are concerned, is anytime that you're looking at almost any sort of science fiction, there are always the humans. I mean, of course, we as the viewers need to have someone we can connect to and view, and so you oftentimes get this, humans are the new people on the scene kind of vibe thing. If you're talking about like Mass Effect, or a lot of times in the Star Trek stuff, where it's, the Vulcans and the Klingons and everything else were flying around in space long before humans, but somehow we rise to prominence. Not really so much in Starfinder. The humans seem to be on pretty equal footing with everyone else. Of course, if you're playing in Absalom, being that Absalom Station is based around where Galarian was, and Galarian was effectively a cradle for humanity, then humans are rather populous. Even in the Galarian setting in Pathfinder, humans are rather populous, much more so than the other races. And so, the humans in Starfinder are basically the descendants or continuation of the Galarian humans. Now, the thing I was going to bring up pertaining towards aliens is concerned, and much pertaining towards what we just talked about with the androids. The Androfan people were humans.
Yes, they were.
They were humans on another planet. They've also established that beyond just humans of Absalom Station, the Aslanti are still a faction in the distant future.
Yep.
We know from other supplements, including the information pertaining towards Galarian's moon and the Moonscar, that the Aslanti were capable of interplanetary teleportation. How advanced their magic was. And as such, the idea that they'd even establish things beyond just establishing an outpost on the moon to establishing outposts elsewhere kind of goes in that same direction. The Ableists kind of screwed up as far as the humans in the Aslanti period were concerned, considering they gave them that much power, and then they're like, oh, we're going to wipe them out with a meteor. Oh, wait, no, they've already spread the other planets.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the elves in Castrovel.
Yeah.
The elves came back from Castrovel, which kind of the same thing with the Aslanti have left and now come back.
Yeah.
So
the humans are very much going to be kind of a jack of all trades, and again, from what I can understand, while I don't think the core rulebook is going to delve much pertaining towards the various human ethnicities, I'm certain that you're still going to be able to explore that, especially with subsequent books when they put out things like Humans of the Stars or whatever the Humans book is going to be when they start putting out books like that.
Yeah.
Or even not necessarily books like that, but articles and other supplements pertaining towards humanity in the Starfinder setting.
And they have said that the gap is a period of time, and that people do or have access to information from before the gap. So it is possible that you have seen Osiriani artifacts, or have read material about that. If you wanted to play that into your characters, I think that's something they do support in terms of your own backgrounds and experiences. So let's see, the next race is actually not native to the Pact Worlds. It's the Kasatha, which are those four-armed, they kind of got like a longer kind of...
sort of a cone head.
Yeah, sort of a cone head. I was trying not to say cone head, but kind of a cone head. So they come from a, if I believe, if I'm remembering right, a desert world.
Yes.
And I don't remember if they're more warlike or less. I think
they're a desert nomadic people.
Yeah.
They're relatively philosophical, all things considered. From what I understand of the Starfinder setting, they came to the Pact Worlds as part of basically a large colony ship. They really had their first run at, my first run-in with them was in Iron Gods.
Yeah.
But they've delved into them a little bit further here and there. They have their own philosophies, their own different beliefs. They're, from what we've gathered, a very almost mystically minded civilization. The idea of them traveling about, being these nomads, moving around through these giant ships and everything else gives me very much kind of a Quarry and Mass Effect feel to them.
Yeah.
Not to do comparisons for everything that we run into, but Quarry and Mass Effect feel to them.
Yeah.
The fourth race are the Lashunta. The Lashunta are a race that was originally introduced, again, in Distant Worlds. They actually come from the nearby world of Castrovel initially. I've always found them to be a very interesting race.
Mm-hmm.
One, that because they actually have a greatly, a widely varied sexual dimorphism,
mm-hmm.
where the women are these tall, beautiful, some would say them, the most beautiful of humanoids, creatures with little antennae that come out of the top, kind of like Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
Go see Guardians of the Galaxy if you haven't. Whereas the males of their race are short, squat, very hairy, like almost dwarvish-esque, like massive beasts. That being said, the males are no less intelligent than the females, and no necessarily more war-minded. The females are the primary hunters and such in their previous civilization. As they progress now to the Starfinder setting, they have branched out further and wider. An interesting thing in the mechanic side of it is when you're choosing your character, you can actually choose to be either the philosophical or the war-minded type, and basically get different racial stats depending on which one of those ways you choose. The entire race were telepathic, which was kind of interesting before, and I'm not entirely positive how they're handling that.
They're still telepathic.
I know they're still, I know that they're still telepathic. I don't know if it's going to work the exact same way. I also don't know if they're planning on including the Shota or not. Before, the Junta were able to effectively telepathically bond. I'm going to go a little bit into Avatar with this, as far as the James Cameron Avatar. They're able to telepathically bond with giant lizards that became their mounts. And they would then ride these giant lizards around and would have these like strong telepathic bond to it. I really hope they're keeping that, because I really kind of want to run around on the back of a giant lizard with a Gatling gun and just...
Space Cavalier.
Yeah, Space Cavalier. I mean, I did establish previously that all Cavaliers are bad people. But I'm fine being a mercenary Space Cavalier.
In the dark, distant future, maybe there's a good Cavalier.
Yes. In the grim darkness of the future, there is only Space Cavaliers.
Our next race is the Shirin. I asked how to pronounce that by Sutter. He said it's Shirin. They are a race of, they kind of look insectoid.
I think they call them like locust people.
Almost like locusts, yeah. So their backstory is they were part of a hive mind civilization and have broken free from that.
I believe it was called the Swarm.
It's either the Swarm or the Hive or something.
I think it was the Swarm.
Yeah, it's the Swarm, maybe. And so each of them are radically independent. They really heavily focus on their independence and actually gain a measure of pleasure from just basic everyday decisions. So there's actually places that have been set up that are call it the equivalent of like a drug den, but for Sheeran, where they just go and make seemingly innocuous choices just to like please themselves. One of my favorite things that James Sutter showed me was Keskadai, who is the iconic Sheeran mystic, has, and maybe we'll pop up a little thing right here, there's a little thing on his belt, and it looks like a test tube kind of looking thing with a little creature inside of it. It's actually Keskadai's son that he put inside of this thing so his son can see the world. So he just has him on his belt, like going on adventures, like saving the world and everything, just like, you know, hey, chilling out while he grows.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's kind of like going spelunking with a little like baby carrier on the front of you.
A little papoose.
If you're also planning on being attacked by monsters with a little baby carrier on the front of you.
Apparently it's very well shielded according to Sutter, so that's official canon.
Yeah. It's like if you put one of your kids like in one of those like hamster balls.
Yeah, and just roll them
around. Then take them to the, you know, out into the plains to look at lions. The Sheeran are kind of an interesting concept. I mean, they're always going to be the bug people. You know, if you look over at 40K, they've got, you know, their own xenomorphs in the Tyranid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at anything like Starship Troopers, although again, Starship Troopers took a lot of inspiration from the 40K on that respect. You know, you can look over at StarCraft, which again took all of its inspiration from 40K, really, if you want to get into it, before anyone blows up our comment sections about, you know, StarCraft.
Yeah.
There's always this insectal civilization. Again, in Distant Worlds, actually, they do bring up an insectal civilization that actually existed in the Pact Worlds, as they are now known. And so that's kind of interesting. It's one of the moons around the gas giant planet, which basically had their own, I want to say it was called the Brood Mother, which is basically a demigod, or maybe even a full-fledged god of like insects and spreading like hive minds and all the rest of that. So I don't know if there's going to be a tie back to that or not. So that's still out there. But it is an interesting concept, and it kind of brings bug people into the way of doing things. Also, it introduces and I guess keeps in both the history as well as going forward this concept of this swarm threat, which having this existential threat to you know, the Pact World is always a great way to bond everyone together and basically keep them from tearing each other apart. Speaking of tearing each other apart, the Vesk. The Vesk are giant lizard people. Kind of like the Gorn, if we're again making continued comparisons to other sci-fi settings, which I mean, I guess we are. They're giant lizard people. They have a degree of sexual dimorphism, although again, they're actual lizard people, and therefore I always applaud the art department from Paizo and everything of not making the women feminized because they're lizards. That being stated, they do actually have varying colors, which I found was, you know, a good way of doing it because that's actually commonly reflected in nature. So the Vesk were a powerful, effectively expansionistic military civilization who eventually came into conflict with Pact Worlds, battled it out, and now have set aside their differences. As such, they are still somewhat not trusted. Some people have kind of compared them to the concept of space orcs. Not 40K space orcs, but Galarian orcs in space. The idea of this, you know, militarized civilization, I think they honestly sound a little bit more bugbearish to me because they sound to be very regimented.
Yeah.
So the idea of basically having this very military society and eventually you get to actually play them. It sounds like they're probably going to be favored for the more soldiery classes.
And they are the iconic soldier, so.
Hence the iconic soldier.
Yeah.
She, actually, the iconic soldier.
Yes. So our last race is the Ysoki, which is rat folk. That's the generic term that they're calling it.
Yes.
From the art that they've shown us, they are not actually all rats. They appear to be, a lot of them are mice as well. So really any of those mice rat types, they've got a little, I've seen some really like actually like cute looking like little white rat ones.
I believe the cover for the pawn set has an adorable like white mouse on the cover of it. So, they're one of the smaller races. They're kind of taking the place of your like halfling gnome in terms of being in the small sized race if you're wanting to play that. The iconic for them is the mechanic. So they kind of fall more into the that'd be the blue collar, I guess, in terms of overall social hierarchy. Well, and it was actually stated in an interview and everything that one of the big things that with the Ysoki that they're kind of going with is again, going back to Guardians of the Galaxy, is it kind of gives you the opportunity to play the Rocket Raccoon kind of character.
We're making so many comparisons. Paizo's going to hate us.
If you want a better comparison than that, Gadget from the Rescue Rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah.
Just mechanic that builds awesome stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, it almost more makes me want to play like a Yosoki soldier and be Monterey.
Because
Monty was the best. I'm sorry, Chip and Dale, Monty, no, that's where it's at.
We're dating ourselves really heavily.
We're dating ourselves really well. No. He joined like a soda cult and everything. It was amazing.
Oh, man.
So, that being said, those cover basically all the races that you're going to run into. Actually, before we move on with the Yosoki, I also like that they are, again, one of the races that was established in Distant Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
They come from another one of the planets in the nearby solar system. They always did this great thing of basically saying that, hey, look, there are these weird races and they're on, the other planets, but they're also on Galarian somehow. Like they've never really answered the question of where the elves come from exactly. Whether or not they're actually from Galarian and then fled whenever the Starstone fell during Earthfall, or whether or not they were actually from another planet, came to Galarian and then just went back when the sky literally started falling. So, another one of the races that are from the surrounding packed worlds. It gives you a pretty good idea of what you're going to run into there. As far as other races are concerned, when they put out the Alien Archives, they're going to add more races. They do have rules in there, as we'd stated previously, for you to play any of the other 6 core races, probably a number of the other races included whenever you're making your characters for Starfinder. So the 6 core races out of Pathfinder. I'm also hoping that they delve a little bit more into the other races. I know that they have actually spoken a little bit about the... I'm going to pause for a second here because I can't remember.
They are also saying that most of the aliens in the Alien Archive will eventually have some type of a player character idea. Their idea is to basically introduce new races as, well, enemy monsters that you'll be able to play, because really, with some restrictions, I'm sure, most of the humanoid races should be playable. As far as what they've stated as their goal with the Alien Archives, and kind of as you move beyond the Pack World system, what you're going to be able to find in terms of the, your Kirk, and you find the, green-haired or the green-skinned Amazons on the planet. You can probably play those Amazons next time you make a character.
Yeah, they are going to be including 2-page spreads for all of them.
Yes.
So almost... Well, a large number of the races in the Alien Archives, you'll get a 2-page spread to also make them playable characters. They've actually started doing that a lot with the best series as well, to make a lot more playable, like monstrous races kind of options. So, and I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, and in the Starfinder setting, it feels like there's going to be more of that. We're not going to just be racist against you because we're all a bunch of humans and you're this one weird thing. So I think there's going to be a lot more of the acceptance.
And not really getting into like the mechanics behind the screens for all of it, but I think it makes a lot of sense from a storytelling standpoint. Whereas if, you guys are out exploring, you land on this planet, you do this giant fight, one of the players, dies. Okay, well, I guess there was just another android on this planet that teams up with them.
Hey, Red Shirt, you're promoted to PC.
Yeah. It actually makes almost a little bit more sense for you to be able to recruit someone from the local populace to then continue on with you. Maybe even act as an envoy back to, Absalom Station and bring another world into the fold.
Speaking of the envoy, classes.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up before we leave races. I'm still waiting to hear about the playable flump. I haven't heard about the playable flump yet. For those of you who are not particularly familiar with the flump are amazing. They're more or less just a joke from way back in the history of Dungeons & Dragons. I know Adam Daigle has had some involvement pertaining towards Starfinder, and I know Adam Daigle is a huge fan of the flump. I believe it's actually his icon for the message boards is the flump.
Goodness. And
the flump are effectively an inverted dinner plate with 2 little stalks for eyes and tentacles that float around underneath them, and were a horrible joke monster until Misfit Monsters Redeemed, to give you an idea of how generally terrible monsters are considered, basically made them into intergalactic space travelers that go from planet to planet warning of encroaching dangers to anyone that will listen to the floating, tentacle-waving creature that floats down from the sky and offers them warning.
Oh, so that's why we never see them in our adventure path.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No one ever actually listens to it. They're kind of like the Green Lantern Corps, but useless. And I love them for it.
Will they be in the Alien Archives? We're taking bets now.
I'm going to say I will put money down that a flump will exist before they finish the third adventure path. Somewhere there will be a flump, just snuck in there. Even if it's just in the background of an art piece, there will be a flump somewhere.
All right, inquiring viewers, get ready. We'll now be looking at every single publication from now on.
Yes, and if I'm wrong, then I will give Jordan, I don't know, $50.
Hey, I'll take that. You heard it here, folks. So classes are 100% different from Pathfinder.
But very close.
They're very close. All right, I will specify that. They're very close, but they're very different. So starting off, again, we're going alphabetical order. The Envoy. People said when they first announced the Envoy that it was a space bard. It's not really a space bard. Think more, Kirk or Picard. You are the kind of charismatic front. You're the person who does a lot of talking, and through your talking, you can give people bonuses or detriments. So it's a little bit almost like a mesmerist as well.
See,
in how you do the buffs.
Again, going with the comparisons because apparently that's just all we do. For the Envoy, they have specifically stated to stress that the Envoy is not necessarily the captain role in the party. The Envoy are the speakers. They're generally good at that. The Envoy are a class that focus primarily on interactions with other people. And so it may be a little bit better to compare it to Firefly. But basically that your character is, it's not just necessarily that, oh, well, I'm the smooth, like, Envoy, I'm a diplomat or something along those lines, I'm Padme or whatever you want from, I'm not really going to talk about those.
I don't know what you're speaking of.
Yes.
That's never happened.
No, I don't remember those. Sand is so coarse. Why did I bring up these movies?
Yeah, that's your fault.
But the Envoy actually covers a various number of positions. Like the scoundrel type of character can also be covered by the Envoy. The con men, the snake oil salesmen, that kind of perspective. Han Solo, yeah, I mean,
he's kind of a little bit more operative.
Yeah, he can be a bit more of an operative. Lando may very well
Lando, there you go.
Good
That's a good one. Yeah,
the Envoy, though. He's a smooth operator. So Lando might be a good kind of example of that, where, basically you're just kind of the smooth, I can get things done on the level sort of guy. Again, if you're going to go with a comparison back to Pathfinder, probably going to be your kind of space bard.
With less music.
With less music. So,
yeah.
I mean, after the Envoy, we have the Mechanic. The Mechanic are basically your tech guy. The Mechanics get all sorts of opportunities to do augmentations. What I can understand, they can actually augment themselves within a certain number of biomechanics as well as even artificial intelligences. The Mechanics are also capable of getting a droid. Apparently droid is the proper term.
Yep.
That they'll get little robotic companions. So it kind of puts the Mechanic in this position of being a little bit of the, it's the class with the pet.
Yeah. That was, from what I was reading last night, this is the class, if you want to have a pet, this is going to be your class.
Yeah.
You can have either the drone or you can embed the AI module into your, what they call exocortex, I think is the term they're using. Basically puts it in your brain. So that gives you a little bit of the kind of ranger thing where you can either have the pet or you can take the bonuses to yourself.
Yeah.
/ your allies.
Paizo has been very good about giving these various options where it's, the ranger can have an animal companion or grants favored enemy bonuses to allies. The druid can have an animal companion or a domain. The paladin can have a bonded weapon or a mount, etc., etc. Giving people multiple options, so there are at the very least 2 options, so that you can basically, if you don't want to bother with a droid that you have to keep track of and change things on and have its own character sheet and everything else, instead you can just have the benefits from an artificial intelligence in your head. Until we look at the mechanics a little bit more in depth, can't necessarily give you what our opinion on the better is, and knowing Paizo, they're probably pretty well balanced, depending on your playstyle.
And I have actually played Starfinder. At PaizoCon, we did not have a mechanic in our group, so I've seen the Envoy, Mystic, Operative, and Soldier, but I have not seen any of the other ones, so mechanics still, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, so mechanic is definitely a solid choice.
Yep, so next is the Mystic. These are the closest to the Cleric. You do get some healing abilities, but where you get your abilities from is a little bit more nebulous. It could be anything from, you know, the powers that be in the darkness of the night, or it could be a deity, it could be from some psychic power that you've manifested. So it's a little bit more kind of open-ended. If you don't want to be a religious character, you can still be a mystic. And it does give you, again, the buffs and debuffs, kind of what you would expect from it. I think we were playing with Keskadai as the mystic. You get like some mental abilities, like you can do like I think it was called a mind thrust, which like does mental damage to people and things like that. So it was really interesting. It was one that Jess played the mystic and was at first kind of like, I don't know. And by the end of it, she was like, yeah, this is good. So I think that's going to be a really interesting class to play if you wanted to be more on the side of the Divine. Although Divine and Arcane no longer exist in the Starfinder universe. It's all magic. They are more on the Divine if you're coming from kind of a Pathfinder setting.
So basically, you know, your cleric equivalent as far as moving forward.
Pretty much.
Next up are your operatives. The operatives are basically your specialists. They're your stealth infiltrators. They're your assassins, for lack of a better term. You know, they're the Inquisitor assassins that fight in the name of the Emperor. They're the you know, specialists that they send in to get the job done.
Assassins, saboteurs, spies, anything like that.
So basically, they're your roguelike class. The operatives are more or less designed for anyone that wants to still continue to do like the stealth route, the infiltration route. The mechanics pertaining towards that have changed, and so a lot of the things based that you would usually do as a rogue aren't necessarily viable options for the operative, but the operative also gets its own benefits. So the operative is good if you like playing that, you know, elite hitman sent in against all odds kind of type.
Yeah, I did get to play the operative. I liked it, and I think it's kind of an interesting mechanic because you kind of get like a combat maneuver before you roll damage to see if you get extra damage to kind of, you know, do like a pinpoint shot or something like that was one of the abilities. So it's not the same as sneak attack because positioning is going to matter a little bit less in Starfinder, I think, but it was still an interesting class and had some you know, interesting bonuses that you can give to your allies by, you know, making your target the equivalent of flat-footed.
Yeah.
Kind of something like that. So it was pretty interesting. I liked it. So our next class is the Solarian. When they were first announced, everybody kind of thought they were the Jedi class. They are not. What the Solarians are, they're split into, they're kind of the metaphysical philosophers who are also warriors. They're the only melee-focused class. So Solarians have either the power of proton or graviton. Proton is the power of light. Graviton is, you know, gravity. And can manifest this into a weapon or armor for themselves and gives them different abilities. So for instance, the Graviton Solarian can actually like kind of make a micro black hole to suck enemies closer to them. You know, if the Proton one can get the equivalent of a lightsaber. Again, I haven't played this one, but it sounds really interesting. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars geek, so I'm going to probably at some point play a Solarian.
It intrigues me for a number of reasons. I mean, the balancing between effectively energy and entropy is kind of intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the class kind of changes depending on whether or not you favor one way over the other, or you walk, you know, again, using a Star Wars reference here, you walk the gray path between the two and keep yourselves balanced. It reminds me conceptually a little bit of the Hex Blade from back in 3.5, where they're able to, again, make like an energy blade thing. Although out of all the classes, the Solarian is really the one that doesn't have an analog that can be dated back to with Pathfinder. And so it's a little bit further out there, it's a little bit different. From what I understand, there's a large philosophical side to them. And so if you're wanting to play a little bit of like a monk-esque class that has this philosophical, you know, energy and balance and all the rest of that, it's a good direction to go.
Mm-hmm.
Following that is the soldier. The name is pretty self-explanatory, much like the fighter is pretty self-explanatory. The soldier is good at guns.
And melee weapons.
And melee weapons, and armor, and probably driving tanks, and
jetpacks,
and
heavy, grenades. Although all of us actually had grenades in our playtest. We actually all had grenades, but so soldiers are the best at combat. So you get the best armor, well, not best, but the biggest weapons, and a lot of your abilities are based around that. So again, you can get cybernetic augmentations that make you basically better at killing things because that's what you do.
If you're going to be new to, we're all going to be new to Starfinder. But if you're introducing new people there to Pathfinder, there's always this idea of, play the fighter or something like that. As far as the more straightforward classes, the soldier is probably going to fall into this category as far as just being a much more straightforward, I'm good at one thing, and that is shooting. I have a very particular set of skills, and they involve blowing things up. If that appeals to you, soldier's a great way to go. If you want to get up and get into melee, soldier's a great way to go. Again, as far as like the versatility and everything is concerned, with the larger focus on equipment, the soldier is probably going to have a wider array of things that they can do than, well, what you would usually expect. So
our last class is the Technomancer. The name is, if you're familiar with, I guess, what's that, Latin or Greek, the Mancer part of it? But anyway. So Technomancers are the equivalent of maybe a wizard or sorcerer. They're kind of more of an arcanist from what the description has been. They focus on the manipulation of magic as applied with scientific principles. So using magic to interface with technology and using technology to augment their magical capabilities. They are a spellcaster class. So you're going to get, this is the class that gets the big boom spells if you wanted to do, your fireballs, and if you want to hack into machines with, just waving a couple of fingers, this is going to be the class for you. I'm really excited about it because I love playing wizards and sorcerers. Technomancers, the way that they've worked the system out has changed a lot because as you've gotten higher levels in Pathfinder, those lower level spells become the things you do when you're out of your good spells, and it's like, okay, I'm out, I guess I'll do, magic missile because I'm out of lightning bolts or what have you. Technomancers get the ability to fuse lower level spell slots together to cast higher level spells. So if you're out of, say, 6th level spell slots, you can take 2 3rd level spell slots, slam them together, spend both of them, and get a 6th level spell off, which I think is a really cool system that I can't wait to play with.
Again, it kind of flashes back for me, not to constantly make comparisons, but to continue to make comparisons. It flashes back a little bit to the Psionics Handbook back in 3.5, where you'd actually have psychic points. So effectively you have a pool. Or again, for any of you who have ever played Final Fantasy or any other video game, it kind of falls into that, like you have a pool of arcane reservoir that you use. Basically it's the Technomancer, so space wizard.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're a wizard in space. Also conceptually, and I think just kind of a feel, it reminds me a little bit of Shadowrun.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
It gets that Shadowrun feel to it.
Yeah, because you're definitely like the Decker would be like the closest.
Yeah.
You're the hacker. You're manipulating the laws of physics and all of that. So
doing all sorts of cool things.
Yeah, because the other thing they get kind of the same thing as the Arcanist exploits. Like you can eventually manipulate your spells to be a little bit different. You eventually get like a ability to basically make something go on for 24 hours. So it's like, hey, I've got mage armor 24 hours a day. Like I'm good.
Honestly, outside of the classes, there are also themes. Themes are one of the new things that they've introduced Themes are one of the new things that they've introduced, changing the concept to character creation. Long story short is it really seems to basically take the place of traits. And so instead of having traits where you choose 2 or 3 or however many traits that you get, that determine extra things pertaining towards your character's backstory, these are kind of rolled entirely into themes. There are going to be 10 themes whenever the book launches that allow you to do things ranging far and wide. There's the captain theme.
Ace pilot, if you're wanting, most of these will give you bonuses for specific parts of the game. So the ace pilot's going to give you bonuses for ship combat,
right?
And piloting. I'm sure there's ones that give you better, cybernetics or something like that.
There's the icon, I know, which has been one that's been kind of like advertised quite a bit as, you're the famous individual. And so to give you an idea of how this basically translates is, an envoy icon could be literally you're a pop star that also goes around in adventures. Or a J-pop star, if you want to. Just have like a holographic projection of you that does shows while you're off adventuring. Kind of a fun concept. You know, you can have the iconic mechanic where you're this like world famous engineer, Tony Stark style mechanic, like an iconic mystic where you're, you know, this like big church, you know, massive figure and everything else, where you're this like celebrity religious figure. Iconic operative would be kind of hard to do unless you want to talk about James Bond.
You're Boba Fett.
Or Boba Fett.
You're Boba Fett.
Boba Fett. That's a really good example right there. So, you know, you're Boba Fett, you know. And so basically you can take like these themes, which give you bonuses, including bonuses on, you know, mechanically speaking to things along the lines of actually affecting your character's starting ability scores. And then you can apply them to any of the others. If none of the like 9 themes, 9 out of the 10 themes fit, the 10th theme is no theme. So if none of them necessarily fit, you can run with no theme and then work with whatever you want. I know mercenary is also a big one as far as the themes are concerned. So I mean, you can be any number of different classes, and I think themes are going to be one of those things that are expanded upon vastly as the game continues to grow. Much in the same way as archetypes are. Now, archetypes do exist in Starfinder. They're actually being included in the core rulebook, and so you're not going to have to wait until the Advanced Star Player's Guide, or whatever they're going to call it. I don't imagine it's going to be the Advanced Star Player's Guide.
I think calling it Advanced Player's Guide would be confusing, but...
Well, yeah, that's why you just slap star into the front of everything. Yes, actually, they do still have the alignment mechanics. You're going to have all 9 of your alignments. Thank you, Dean. The alignments are still going to be the exact same as they were in Pathfinder. Really, it doesn't have as large of a function in Starfinder. To my knowledge, so far, none of the classes actually have an alignment restriction, so there's none of the classes that you're going to be playing that basically require you to be lawful good yet. Once we get Space Paladins, that's an option.
Those are probably a thing.
Those are probably a thing. But there still are alignments pertaining towards things, considering that, as we addressed earlier, there is the drift. And the drift, whenever you're using your faster than light travel, takes you from one part of the universe to another. And in the process, you effectively slip between the planes into this plane that can only be accessed via technology. But this plane, much like the energy planes, the negative energy, positive energy planes, so on, abut all the surrounding planes. Meaning that effectively you could have an event horizon moment, for any of those of you who have seen that movie, spoiler alert, where you effectively open a pit into hell and have devils burst onto your ship. Again, a little bit of a hearkening to using the warp in 40K.
Yeah.
And so you can suddenly have daemons burst onto your ship. I know that some people don't like pronouncing the A, but daemons.
It's daemons, guys.
Daemons.
Yep.
And in that case, these are creatures that are outsiders that do have an alignment, and therefore they are key to a certain plane. And so if you're going to have hell and the abyss and heaven and Elysium, you therefore have to have good and evil. So the alignments are not going to have as large of a role, but there's still going to be something, or a large focus with your characters. Gear is, again, as we stated previously, a large focus. A lot of this is going to go into weapon. Interestingly, gear has levels now, although these are not level restrictions. So if you look at this and you think, you know, oh god, it's like I'm playing Borderlands, immediately springs to mind.
Yeah, it was like give any like game RPG where it's like you pick up a level 15 rifle and you're like, I can't use this.
I can't use this until I'm level 15.
Yeah.
It's more or less a guideline to what is available to a character. So the concept that I've kind of heard kicked around is the idea of a license. So if you think about, you know, our world, as a side note, we are based in America, for any of those of you who happen to be not from, or from out of this country, and also don't immediately recognize our American accents. We are based in America, and I can go to a store and I can buy a handgun with a 3-day waiting period. But at the same time, if I was wanting something akin to a bazooka, I could not procure that. The same kind of concept goes into your characters, that a character can go and buy a weapon and it's just like, oh, well, okay, this is fine, you know, this is a weapon, you know, maybe he's using it for self-defense. But if you want, you know, a matter autonomizer, maybe they'd be disinclined to give that to a first-level character.
Yeah. And so there appear to be basically tiers of weaponry that follow specific elemental paths. So like 0 guns are the cold guns. You've got like your fire pistols, electricity pistols, acid guns that go in size from, you know, say basic pistols all the way up to like the equivalent of a bazooka, I guess.
Rocket launcher, whatever you want.
Yeah, and so each of those will then have tiers that it basically scales up the damage. So what they've kind of told me was, don't think of it so much as this is my sword and this is the only sword I'll ever need because I'm just going to upgrade it with magic. You can still enchant stuff, but it's more likely that you're going to toss it out, get a better gun, and then maybe slap an additional enchantment on it, rather than having this one sword that you've used the entire adventure path, which is what we do pretty much right now.
And a little bit, this is already a factor in Pathfinder, but a little bit more of a factor for Starfinder are weapons special abilities. In Pathfinder, you will periodically go, you know, hey, I'm going to take improved trip, maybe I should grab a whip, because it's a trip weapon. There's going to be a much larger focus for any of those of you who went through the technology guide. Whenever that dropped, you probably remember that there's a number of special abilities for any weapons. So some of them are rapid fire, some of them are cone effects. And this actually falls into that same category where every type of weapon will have specific things that it can do. So it's maybe this weapon does 3-round bursts, and maybe this one is fully automatic, maybe this one is semi-automatic. And so as you progress your characters, you may just go, instead of, okay, well, I'm going to, as you're stating, just magically enchant up this weapon. It's one of those, well, I really like my, you know, space submachine gun, but maybe you should trade it in for this space assault rifle.
Or the space minigun.
Or space minigun, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
Space Uzi. Space Uzi that shoots out healing bullets. Who knows?
That'll be a splat book. That'll be a splat book for sure.
So that covers a large amount of the mechanics that we were looking into. As far as what is actually going to be coming out, we again addressed a large number of this recently. For everyone waiting eagerly for their orders, they should be dropping any time now, shortly. And as such, you should be able to get the PDFs and get a good idea. From what I understand, the PDFs look phenomenal.
The books themselves, I got to actually hold a black and white print off of the PDFs, and it was amazing just looking at it in black and white. So we got to see some at PaizoCon, see a couple of the full page spreads, and it's just another tier up in terms of the art design. Like, they really took the time to put in a lot of love into the core rulebook, so it's as much, you know, a rulebook as is an art piece.
Yeah. Again, we're going to have a review of that whenever that drops and get a better idea of how that is going to work. As far as the setting itself is concerned, we are planning on starting up a series pertaining towards, well, basically much like our Explore series, but for Starfinder when it drops. And so expect to see more of that as, well, once we get our hands on the books and can start processing through all of the information and then getting that back to all of you. Starfinder will also include space combat.
For the space combat, the way that they have structured it is it's entirely optional. It is a mechanic in the game, but it is something that there is no, like, you know, you're going to be on the ground firing up at a ship. It's pretty much ship-to-ship combat in its own module that if you don't like it, you can throw it out very easily. But it's done on a hex grid. You will have a ship. The ships are designed for 4 to 6 people in the ships. Each adventure path book is actually going to have a ship in it for you to play. Not necessarily that you need to change ships out all the time, but you do have it kind of like Skull and Shackle, where you can buy, you know, you'll have a ship and you can upgrade it. For those playing in organized play, it is assumed you have a ship. So, yeah, guys, you're like the police going down and just checking out a ship and flying off.
You basically just stop off at the Enterprise dealership at
the rent-a-ship.
The rent-a-ship dealership at the
bullets are free.
Just hop inside, sign your little waiver for how many, you know, light years of travel you expect this to be,
and how many bullets you're going to expend, or missiles or what have you.
And then yeah. The Starship combat is designed to basically include all of the players, and so mechanically speaking, all of the skills that you're going to be using while you're on the ground are also going to be viable skills when you're up in the air. And so you're not going to have to focus on something. So for instance, if you want to be the pilot, sure, you put ranks in your piloting skill. That's also, you're probably going to be the driver when you're down on the ground. You're probably going to be the one doing, you know, driving a tank if you need to steal a tank. You're probably going to be doing all of the other, like, manipulating any form of automotive.
Similarly, if you're, you know, a soldier, you're a weapons specialist, being a gunner is going to be, you know, probably more your game. Something else they did say, because this was a question that was asked at PaizoCon, was about AI, because they have established that AI is going to be in the game. Can you get an AI for your ship? Absolutely. You too can get an AI module for your ship. It's not going to be nearly as good as a player. But if it's like, hey guys, we need to get an extraction. Hey ship, come get us. Totally, you can get that. It is an add-on module.
Now, to address that, and again, I wasn't there for all of that, they have also stated that as far as true artificial intelligences, those will not be viable for it, because again, it kind of gets into that idea of the moment it is an actual true intelligence, owning it is slavery.
Yeah.
And as such, you know, don't be a slaver, because that's generally a terrible, terrible thing. And so, exactly as far as all that goes, kind of out there. Yeah, I mean, that basically covers the majority of the Starfinder stuff. Gives us a pretty good idea of what to expect. We're going to have our hands on the books here soon, as I imagine all of you will. And we'll be back here to cover our thoughts of the core book, as well as the first adventure path. So until next time, good luck, Pathfinders. And Starfinders.
Bye.